So we are honored today to have Bill Monroe Jr. with us. I personally feel like I knew Bill before he was born through his father's writings in a way. That kind of dates me a little bit, but I feel fortunate that Bill is a very good friend. We've served on the NSIA board together for several years and crossed paths a lot. I fished with him a lot. And I would say that in the scheme of things, as a professional guide, I would say that Bill is intense. I would put him on the intense level on hookups. And some of you that have been with him, it feels a little bit like Armageddon when there's a fish on. And he's particularly hard on his father, which is kind of funny to watch that. But anyway, he gets him. He's a consummate professional. He wouldn't be on Owen's show as much as he is if he wasn't trusted. And what I like about the guy is he does his research. He understands he's not going to fall to one side or another unless he believes it. And I'm sure you guys have some really good non-softball questions for him. We talked a little bit about it before a lot of you got on, but I wanted to kick it off with a softball question because I really like his father and what he brought to the Northwest. And I'm positive that he created a lot of fishermen, and that's what are fishers, which is important. But you had a little time to think about it because you probably saw the post, Bill. What's the most memorable time with your dad, and how old were you?
I'll tell you, yeah. I'm going to go with, there's two, and they're right on par. The first one, I was a little boy, and I think I was about 8 years old, and we were casting on the Sixes River down in, a little southern coastal range. And I was casting a little spinner, and my dad thought it was the dumbest thing of what I was doing, but just wanted to keep me busy while him and Willie and I think it was Denny Hanna, I don't remember, but they were just, doing their thing, and they just said, "Here, go keep Junior busy." And I caught the only fish of the day. That was really cool. I think they paid attention to me at that point, and that was really good. The next one, though, this is kind of a bigger one. When I started having my own children and started taking people out to fishing professionally, I'm about 13 years into that. So it was about 10 years ago, I on a professional level, and then I had my own kids with me. They were just starting to be young enough to be able to understand the basics of shad fishing, which is shad fishing is just, it's great. It's one of our true underrated fisheries in the Northwest. But having my dad there while I was fishing with him and my kids, his grandkids, and we caught like 100 that day. And that's when it was like full circle for me. This is it. This is what I was meant to do. And I think if I was on an ambulance running 911 calls, and I kind of knew that it was time to kind of put that off to the side and concentrate that I'm not here to get rich by any means. I'm going to do something I love, and that's taking people fishing and putting them in the outdoors. My dad put people into the outdoors through words, and I couldn't do it. It was the hardest thing. I did try in college. That didn't work out for me. I actually excelled in taking people out, showing them what to do, getting a little intense. That's a big one, by the way. And just showing them how special it is that we have this resource that's worth taking care of. And it's what I've really grown to put a lot of effort into. I care 100% about the outdoors and the fish in the states of Oregon and Washington, and it means the world to me. So that's good stuff.
12 or 13 years you've been in the business. I remember probably 11, 12 years ago with you on the dock, and you were being mercilessly harassed by all the old guys. They played tricks on you. One of the guys told you your boat was listing a little bit early one morning.
Yeah, right.
Did everything they could do to make you worry, and you made it through. You got got some barnacles now, and
Yep.
it's pretty cool.
Yep. I'm a
All right,
little
that's
weathered.
it for the
I
softball
like it.
stuff. No more
Yep.
softball questions. Give them
No
a
more
hard.
softball. Okay, well that works.
Hey, I've got a question for you. It's a softball. So what is your home system? I mean, where's the quick, easy fishing
It's
spot
kind of
from?
funny. That's a great question. Wade, I grew up fishing basically Columbia, Willamette, Clackamas, Tillamook. Those are the rotations for me. And I would pretty much consider the Willamette and the Columbia, in this lower below Bonneville. That's kind of home. It always has been. I've been doing it for probably 35 of my 44 years on this planet. And this is why I put so much effort into the Columbia fisheries, being on the stakeholders groups and listening and being a part of decision making on compact, and actually having a voice for not only the resource and the opportunity that belongs, but also for fishing guides. I about 8 years ago, I became the fishing guide liaison for the board of directors of NSIA, and I've kind of stuck there. And why we have a really kind of a hard job. It's really important to me because we have to be involved, and being involved at whether it's political, whether it's local, or whether it's like being out there and experiencing it, we have to be involved. And that's kind of a big deal. There is times and times and times again where I just see people, they don't get involved. They just expect the fish to be there, and expect the ocean to be great, and expect tules to be managed properly, and expect North of Falcon to go the right way. And it doesn't, especially this year. This year was the hardest and probably the most difficult North of Falcon summer fall fisheries I've ever seen. Ever. I'm sure we can dive into that, but we need some changes, and it's evident. The managers of Oregon and Washington, I can't even begin to fathom how difficult of a job they have. It's unreal, the stuff that they have to put in with staff numbers, Pacific salmon treaties, US versus Canada, in-season management. They can't update run. It's messy, man. It's messy. Yeah.
Well, I'd heard it referenced that the sportsman turnout at Buoy 10 this year was 200% of the exceeded or of the anticipated volume.
So get this. We were about 215% of normal anticipated fisheries, because of it went mark select, right? And that's considered hatchery only. When we go into North of Falcon, all the stakeholders, we sit down and we come up with these ideas, and we have staff run the numbers. We have staff look at options, and then they come up with the best three. They put it through to the important federal side, and that's where NOAA gets involved. They approve it, blah, 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 blah. Well, participation went through the roof. Now, the mark select period of Buoy 10 up to the point where hatchery was going to end on the 25th, up to that point, it was working. We had 250% participation. It was way over what they thought, but it was working. It operated at about 104% of expectation through that 25th period. And then the next 4 days, when it was any Chinook period, they saw fishing and fisheries and Chinook catch and mortality on levels they've never seen ever in any record. It set the highest record for mortality, catch rates, participation, all of it. It was beyond what they had thought was possible. And it can only do that if there's fish around. And obviously the forecasted number of tules, the forecasted number of BPH, which is the Bonneville pool segment, the forecasted segment of herbs actually did go up and now has come back down. That's why we're shut down again. But we had catch rates on the boat per angler. The record in 2014, which is the last really good run that we had of 1.1 million Chinook and coho combined, that was a record. The record catch there was 2.4 fish per boat, and that was really good, really good. This year, in those periods that I was talking about after hatchery ended, it went to 3.8. They've never seen that. It never. The ocean was loaded with fish. The bay was loaded with fish. Upriver was just starting to get good. It was like, how do you control this beast? We don't have answers. And we've got these federal issues. There's guidelines that say, hey, you can update in season every segment of Chinook, herbs, BPH, anything that's Snake River Wild, Springers, Summer Chinook, you can update those in season. But the one that you cannot update in season, which would have allowed us to keep fishing because there was obviously plenty of them, was tules, the LRW and LRH segment of lower river hatchery fish. That's the umbrella they all fall under, is LRH. They were not allowed to update those runs due to the Pacific Salmon Treaties. And the segment of that is called US versus Canada. US v. Canada is a little segment of the treaty that says the Canadian troll fleet has every power they could really wipe out our spring Chinook stock. And we covet our springers, they're coveted. So they agree to not go after our springers if we agree to raise and guarantee the survival of tules. Now, tules in our waters, when we run into them in the estuary or the ocean, they're not really good fish. They start to lose their protein levels in their skin, and they're not good. But we have to raise a certain amount of them because we have this agreement with Canada. I don't know how to circumnavigate that. I don't have the answers, and I want to come up with it. I know that ODFW has a little bit of a hope. They might be able to change the way that tules are either forecasted or managed. So we're waiting to see what that's going to come in north of Falcon coming up for 2023. My opinion, this is strictly my opinion, I don't like tule management anymore. And with what meaningful spring Chinook opportunities we get in like late March or early April, which is so little right now, the way that we operate with spring Chinook, I just don't think the Canadians can get all of our springers. Maybe we don't need to have the US versus Canada agreement, and they can go in for spring, and I'm sure our springers might be able to survive. And maybe we can just get rid of tule management altogether. I don't know. This is all hypothetically speaking, but tules and the management thereof are ruining fisheries. They're ruining towns. They're ruining businesses, and they're ruining the sport fishing public, and the fact that they're losing faith in fisheries. This is detrimental. All these four things is detrimental to the Pacific Northwest that we operate with fisheries. And the managers are trying everything they have. Like I said, I don't want their job. I don't envy them. They deal with so much. But again, tules, problem. We got a problem with north of Falcon. We got a problem with tule management, and I don't know how to make it work. They are working with it year after year after year to try and make changes and to try and make forecasts work to be able to, drop that exploitation rate so we can actually have a full-fledged fishery from, August 1st to Labor Day. That's what buoy 10 should be. It's August 1st to Labor Day, right? That's what we're used to.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't had one of those for many years. It's crazy.
We've got a gentleman with his hand up. Andrew, you have a question?
Yeah. Hi, Bill. Good to see
Hi,
you.
Andy. How are you?
Awesome.
Cool.
So what we've got here is kind of the fruit of the poisonous tree, and we've all bought into it, and that is the basis of salmon management is to manage for commercial harvest, and the commercial harvest doesn't drive the economy. The economy of recreational fishing is so much greater. Now
It's the main segment. Yeah.
Yeah, yet we've all bought into the idea that we need to manage salmon as an economic crutch for a very small segment of fishermen. I think there's like 200, or there's less than 200 commercial gillnet licenses in the Columbia River, and the Tules are the chum. Go back a second. Chum are being managed as a money fish in Puget Sound because they harvest the eggs and ship them overseas. And in order to get them established, they've had to extirpate runs of other species in Puget Sound tributaries. I am much more fluent in Washington management than I am Oregon management, but I do know that the Columbia River still, the management philosophy is driven by commercial harvest much more than it is recreational harvest, and commercial fisheries are the tail that wags the dog. And that to me is, I think, the vulnerable point of attack. And our community, the recreational fishing community, is much greater than in numbers than the commercial community, but the commercial community has figured out a way to speak with one voice, and the recreational community, the best thing we are at is in stepping on each other's toes and pointing fingers at each other and in weakening our voice. We have not figured out a way to speak with one voice. This is, of course, my own personal opinion, but I have invested a number of years in it. But I'd like that to be something we all think about, is buying into this idea of managing salmon fisheries in Oregon and Washington for commercial harvest, being commercially driven as opposed to being driven by the biggest economic footprint.
Andy, we've talked about this time and time again on the boat, you and I totally agree with you. I also want to say that we've got a real problem on your side with WDFW. They've done ultra harm in making the Columbia River reforms disappear.
Yep.
They did that thinking that they were going to get rid of, the Columbia River Basin endorsement, and therefore that they're going to be allowed to go into non-concurrence with Oregon. And that was all done through, I don't want to say, because I don't have the facts, but I'm pretty sure it was all done through backdoor politics. And that's why you see WDFW Commission having meetings on the very farthest eastern side of the state of Washington, to where people can't go and voice their opinion because they were able to make that happen. And
Washington Commission routinely moves meetings around the state. Don McIsaac was appointed, and he is the principal architect of all this. They did choose the meeting of Spokane to gut the Columbia River reforms that we worked so hard to get through. But
Yep.
there is the politics in Washington. If it were done by the back door, it would almost be better, but they've done it right in our face with impunity. We have no way to fight back. McIsaac has led a group of uninformed commissioners to back his play, and he's protected by J.T. Austin, who's the Governor Inslee's natural resources advisor for fish. And Governor Inslee just is not informed and really doesn't care. The only time fisheries gets on his radar screen is when there's a problem, and both Commissioner or Director Susuwind and his advisor J.T. Austin, their prime directive is to keep the hell off his radar screen. So they're going to do anything they can to keep this from rising to the level where it needs to be. And again, that's where our blunted, weak voice does not serve us at all well. So I just want to put that.
I agree, Andy. I know, I hear you.
Don, I see that you're trying to raise your hand here.
Yeah, I keep bringing our economic impact report in, but just to put a little meat on the bone that he was just talking about, and there are numbers that you guys need to have always in front of you, and that is the value of recreational anglers is between Washington and Oregon is $640 million. The value to commercial fishing is $9,900,000.
Exactly.
That's a number. And to his point, why are we managing this to that tiny little, I mean, we know the answer to that, I guess, but those are big numbers, 650 and about 9.
I think the real question is, Don is, and Andy and Wade and everybody else, whoever else is on here, what are we going to do about it? What can we do? And that's where me personally, I fight for the opportunity to go fishing. I fight for the opportunity as a fishing guide to take the licensed buying public who otherwise doesn't have the option or the ability to go out in a boat themselves. That's my job. And then I fight for the fish. That's my job. I'm a steward to the resource on multiple levels. And when it comes down to the commercial fishing, and my dad, he takes a lot of heat because he supports the commercial entity overall. On the Columbia, I take a little bit of a different approach. I don't agree with that fully. I think gillnets have a place on the Columbia River, but I think it's not in the main stem. I don't think that there should be a gillnet in play on any of the zones 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at all. Above Bonneville Dam, gillnets and the treaty tribal rights are unmatched. I totally think that they belong in the river because A, it's their tribal treaty rights, and B, they do a lot for fisheries. But below Bonneville Dam, from zones 5 through 1, you do not need a gillnet on that main stem of that river ever again. And that's where the Columbia River reform should have been in play, because we created safe zones. And the safe zones are the zones where gillnets can go into off-channel areas and they can gillnet because they've taken fish from all sorts of different hatcheries in order to be able to make those safe zones flourish. And I don't know if Andy has the numbers. We've talked about it with him before because we've actually had really intense conversation. But the safe zones had a record year. They caught more fish in the safe zones than ever, and they're still got infiltration into WDFW to be able to put a gillnet and have non-concurrence with Oregon. And Oregon their hands are tied. Tucker absolutely is besides himself. He doesn't know what to do. Non-concurrence is forced their hand in multiple ways because WDFW has chosen to do this. And we got a mess on our hands.
Yes, we do.
I don't know quite how to fix it, but I sure wish that we would have some new governors who would appoint people to the commissions who actually hold licenses. They actually participate in the outdoors. They actually go hunting. They actually go fishing. And that's where we have our voice to vote.
Hey, Brad, good to see you on the call. I see you got your hand up.
I
you
do.
got?
Hey, yeah, thanks. Yeah, hey, good. Hey, Bill,
Hey, Brad, how are you, man?
I was so impressed with you one time years ago. I don't even know your dad, but I reached out and sent him an email and I said, Bill, you got to be okay if you can raise a young man like your son. And he says, yeah, Brad, you know what? I can't take any credit for that. That's his mom.
Oh, that's really great.
Hey guys, so here's a thought. About 15 years ago, when Gary Loomis came down here and talked about gill nets in the main stem Columbia, I ponied up $1,000 and became a lifetime member of CCA. I mean, I bought the Kool-Aid, or I drank the Kool-Aid. And I have continually ever since went to all those hearings during the Kitzhaber years, testified, when we were moving the needle a little bit. So here's where I might be coming to on the paradigm shift, though. And Tucker, like you said, Bill, is an awesome man. I'm glad he is managing the resources for us. He is a quality guy. And he and I are on the Columbia Basin Collaborative now, which is a new kind of board that's been formed with stakeholders from Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and the tribes. And I told him, I said, hey, Tucker, I don't blindside you. And by the way, we're on the hatcheries and harvest work group. And there's about 4 or 5 work groups. There's hydropower projects, habitat, estuary habitat, tributary habitat, things like that, predation. And I serve on that hatcheries and harvest work group with Tucker. And I said, Tucker, I don't want to blindside you. But when we get to the harvest part of things, we have got to come to terms with non-selective gear fishing on mixed fisheries, where 13 of those stocks are listed. And the whole reason for this Columbia Basin Collaborative is for salmon recovery. It's actually primarily zone 6 and above. It's above the dam.
Yeah.
But so anyhow, I told him I didn't want to blindside him, but here's the thing, guys, and here's the paradigm shift I might be coming to. Tucker said, Brad, honestly, I don't care if you kill those listed fish, line in a hook, or they die in a gill net. It doesn't matter, because neither one of you guys, you the sporties or the commercials, have access to enough of the run to where those mortalities are going to impair mortal conflicts for the run itself. He said, we don't give you access. We manage the seasons. And if you go back and look at the historical peaks, you guys aren't fishing during those peaks. So I don't care if it dies in a net or dies on a hook. The mortalities for us are the same. Okay, so that's one way to think about it. And I trust him. He knows more about that management than I do.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, there are commercial fishing interests on this board. And I need them. I need to work with them for hatchery, advocacy, and abundance. And I'm not sure I can kneecap them because of the use of their gear and then turn around and say, guys, I need your help advocating for abundance and for hatchery. So anyhow, I'm just saying, you guys, paradigm shift, maybe enough of this worrying about the gill nets. They're here to stay. If Betsy Johnson, and I don't want to make this a political deal weight at all, but all of us on CCA know what a tough battle she was on gill nets when we were fighting her. In fact, Kitzhaber's
she was the main wall that we would always come into. Yeah.
Kitzhaber's comment. Remember when we got signatures for the
ballot,
ballot measure, and we went to him with a funder in Vancouver that was going to pony up $500,000 to show baby sea lions, and none of us on this call care about sea lions, but I got to tell you, the babies are cute. To show those babies strangled in gill nets on television, and Kitzhaber said, guys, no, that's not the way to manage this resource. It's got to be co-managed, and a ballot measure isn't the way to do it. I've got a better idea. And we said, okay, do you not want us to put this on the ballot. And he said, no, 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 God, I need you to put it on the ballot. That's the only leverage I have against Betsy Johnson, but I don't want you to support it. We all know that story, right? But
Yep.
anyhow, Betsy's pretty powerful. And if she becomes governor, this battle on the gill nets is going to die, you guys. So anyhow, maybe we shift this paradigm and we say, you know what? We need those commercial fishermen. We got to work with them.
That's it.
Honest with you, hatcheries and abundance,
That's it.
hatcheries and abundance are in jeopardy, big time. And we need those guys to help us out.
And Brad, you know that she made this switch to an independent role because she still got the Coastal Caucasus back. That's her goal. You know that. But she made the switch to be like, man, you guys, maybe you should realize that maybe I'm here to kick ass and take names. I don't care what you think about me. I'm going to get my state back. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to raise more fish.
Yeah. Yeah. She's a hatcheries proponent. Absolutely. So anyhow, I'm just saying, you guys, maybe we put this fighting with the gill netters. That's just a thought. It's a paradigm shift.
No, I totally agree with that. And that's where I've gone down the same road. Is the commercial element is here to stay. We need the commercial element on the Columbia River, period. End of story. Whether it's safe zones or we figure out a way to selectively guarantee the mortality of the fish.
Yeah, I'm way more worried about hatcheries, you guys, and abundance.
I am too.
Than I am the fish that die in the gill nets.
Yep.
Hey, Don, I know that you're raising your hand there. I did have you on mute.
Heath Heikkila, our fish guy, and Sean Miller, the lobbyist folks, about a month ago, were talking a lot about where the buyback was going. Does anyone have any updates or any theoretically where that's gonna, if that's gonna happen, if there's any hope for that? I don't know.
I missed the call to the Washington call today, and they did discuss it, but I don't have an update on it.
Yeah.
I think Heath is pretty deep in that one.
Yeah, but theoretically, does anyone, is there hope that that might be something to get the ball rolling?
Well,
anybody who puts their faith in Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife to do anything that's good for us, I think is blowing smoke. Okay, I'm just going to say it flat out. I'm going to take you to task a little bit, Bill, on your comment about we need gill nets.
No, I didn't say we need gill nets. I said we need commercial entity to be present on the Columbia River.
Okay, so the nuts of that are changing the mix, the ratio of hatchery to wild on the spawning beds, and that's been the limitation of hatchery production, because back when we had the Hatchery Scientific Review Group, the science was pretty clear that you want to have no more than about 30% hatchery fish straying on the spawning grounds. The only way there's only two ways to get them off. One is to catch them and remove them. The other way is to not produce them. And the gill nets kill fish in the same ratio as they exist in the river. So they're not a selective removal tool. And then Washington did the mortality study on the selective gear and determined that it had a higher mortality than the gill nets did. So they killed that one dead. There's what I want to say to you is I was very active in Washington politics, and the last year before I moved to Oregon, the last year that I was involved, the tribes had 9 lobbyists working the halls of Washington, the Washington legislature. Now, why, you got to ask yourself, why would they do that when they're not governed by any of the laws of Washington? Why would any of the tribes have lobbyists working? And one of their biggest jobs, the biggest thing they did, was to support gill nets, to support the commercial fishing interests. And they did it for one reason only. They don't want to be the last ones killing wild fish with nets. They don't want to be left standing alone. They want the commercial fishing fleet out there running interference for them. So that's, ask yourself some questions. Be inquisitive and be questioning about everything we think we know, because I'm not sure that some of the things we are going forward with and relying on are necessarily worthy of believing. So don't be bashful about asking questions and making sure you understand the answers. And I'm not sure even understanding the first answer is the right way to go. Just, again, my 2 bits worth.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's good discussion. All right. Hey, let's go to some questions here. Looking to see what we've got here in the chat line. First question was, North of Falcon is run by whom? Commercial, do they have a big say?
So here's the deal. North of, okay, we've got sturgeon, we've got spring Chinook, and we've got, well, summer Chinook is mainly operated by ODFW. They run the staff to be able to operate the forecasts in season settings for those fisheries. WDFW is in charge of North of Falcon. And once North of Falcon came into fruition a while ago, it became trying to think about how to say this nicely, because this is my main problem. North of Falcon became an absolute nightmare in trying to figure things out. It's got multiple levels of processes. It's got multiple levels of staff reporting. It's got multiple levels of federal contingencies put upon it. It's got a PFMC element, and I really do not want to get started on PFMC because that's a whole nother nightmare that I don't like very much. We've got, Canada, we've got trawl fisheries that actually from Alaska that play a small element in North of Falcon. We've got a big North of Falcon mess, and WDFW is the agency tasked to be able to run that program. Now, they work with Oregon and they ask for Oregon's help on staff when needed for North of Falcon. They all do this together. But WDFW is got a lot of stuff going on, and legislature and appointments and they've changed Columbia River managers multiple times, a couple because they were forced out due to poor performance. And then we've got Charlene, Dr. Charlene, she's in there now. She's really a decent human, but she's got her hands tied on multiple levels as well. It's really a difficult thing. And I've actually been quoted in the Columbian newspaper for Vancouver. I'll stick to it. North of Falcon isn't working. I don't think North of Falcon is working at all. I think it's ruining fisheries, towns, businesses. I don't have a solution for that. I don't think any of us have a solution to North of Falcon, whether it should operate differently or whether it should stay in play and operate, but we should adjust it. I don't have a solution. All I know is that back in the days, and of course, fish and fisheries are different. Back in the days, we didn't have North of Falcon. We operated really well. Nowadays, we have a 10, 15, 20-year average of nothing but messes. And that's not fair to the people who buy licenses and want to go fishing to try their opportunity to be able to catch a salmon in the Pacific Northwest, mainly the Columbia River.
One of the things I've heard recently, and I'd love to know your feedback on, would be like a tule identification program. Something to educate our fishermen, Especially maybe those, 2-time fishing per year, they're going down to a buoy 10. But,
Yeah.
education from the guides to help understand, yeah, I know that fish looks awesome, but,
Don't, let's let that one go. You know what? Actually, that's a good point, Wade. That's a good point. We started something like that. There were many times where over the past however many like 5 years, 10 years, where we've seen a lot of like guides that don't quite have the full grasp of what these fish are, and that has happened. We've really tried to educate, and sometimes it boils over to some type of frustration and anger, and it's never meant to be like that. I've tried to make that really clear. But we have started to think about maybe we should all come together, if not on a guides association level, which we do have. Washington now has their own, but a Thule primary identification system. And I've put up many things because NSI we've done that as well, and put out, hey, if this is a Thule, here's the telltale signatures of what its teeth, it's a short football fish, it's got leopard back spots, you name it. We've tried to put it out there, but we don't have the power to get it fully out there and just completely, immersed in the sport fishing public. And I think that we were going to start presenting options to staff at ODFW, because we haven't talked to WDF about it. Maybe we can include Thule identification in licensing, literature. Maybe a Thule identification piece can come out in a piece of paper when you print out, or when you receive, or when you go and get your tags and your license in the state of Oregon. When you get your endorsement, maybe it can say, hey, here's a Thule, this is what we do. If it has a fin, that's a no-go. Okay. Or if it's a hatchery Thule, use your best judgment. If you want to, if you absolutely have to. It's a hatchery thing, that's difficult too. But yeah, that's a really good point.
Well, I know one of our state board members that's very interested in lifting this up, so I'm going to actually point him in your direction if you don't mind.
We should. Yes,
Cool.
That'd be great.
Cool.
Yep.
Hey, I'd love to see some additional questions. Anything you'd like to ask of Bill? What's your favorite winter steelhead stream?
Oh man, making me give up the goods. That's a tough one. I used to really like the Clackamas, and it kind of doesn't really produce much anymore. That's a real sad thing. It's very busy on the coast of Oregon, and that's a difficult thing as well, because it's one of the only areas with active steelhead fisheries. But the Tillamook Bay estuary systems, that's unique. They've got 5 rivers running into one bay estuary system, and all of those areas have a steelhead presence, and that's kind of great. I really enjoy the Wilson and the Trask. I don't go that much anymore. Ever since I had kids, I used to take a little bit of time off in the winter to spend time with my kids after a really busy Chinook in summer period for the fall. But I really like that. The Cowlitz is pretty darn good nowadays too. It's making a little comeback. I going back to the Columbia, we've got a steelhead problem on the Columbia for summer, which actually leads into a wintertime regime, because the bee run is in detriment. And the bee run are the bigger, extremely late running steelhead on the Columbia River. They are a primary, August through November segment of the Columbia. and their numbers have just dwindled. Their headwaters are for the upper, Snake water, the clear water in Idaho. They're in peril. And then you start looking at like climate change and ocean conditions, and a Columbia River that reaches 76 degrees one year, and the steelhead have no choice but to hang out in cold water refuges of like the Deschutes or the Sandy or the Washougal or the Cowlitz. And we have to shut, those areas down. That's real difficult. But as far as winter steelhead go, that's the Oregon coast is I just love it over there. Now the Washington coast, I mean, heck, man, you got land of up in the Quinault area. That's a really special stream. To be able to fish is a very, very big honor to be able to do that. It's kind of a big deal.
A question from Andreas: how much do you think the decline of steelheads due to overfishing in the Columbia or in the ocean?
In the ocean?
In the ocean.
A lot of it. A lot of it. I don't think that the steelhead decline, matter of fact, we have shown that the steelhead decline isn't because of overfishing in rivers. It's actually in ocean. And the steelhead are actually rearing themselves in areas away from the Chinook. The steelhead stay in a certain spot out in the ocean, which is completely different than where the Chinook go. And just so happens that the steelhead are being intercepted by a lot of, how do you say it? International or non-purposeful commercial fishing. And that's a problem. Sometimes the steelhead end up as bycatch and they're just discarded. And that is even more, we've seen actually the bycatch up in the Alaskan trawl fishery. We've actually got numbers now that show that it's out of control. It's really really dangerous.
Yeah, it seems like something's going on. I know we were down fishing in Bowie 10 area, early in October. Should normally be off the hook for coho, and we had some dead. I mean, not some; they were all just dead days. And we moved to a different fishery, but swung back by Sunday, and fish counter said 3 fish over the weekend. That was it. That came in at Hammond. So
that's a problem.
Yeah,
I went tuna fishing. I took 3 days off to go tuna fishing. We were out for 50 miles, and there were a couple boats around us who caught like 3 coho, and we were 50 miles out there. Why are they out there? That shouldn't be happening. They should be inshore. And we were thinking upwelling was taking place, which pushed all of the bait offshore. That could be a thing that might be happening for this late of the fall. Did you see Bonneville? Bonneville spiked. There's a little bit of a spike going for the coho. That's kind of nice to see. Maybe that'll keep up. Maybe they're blowing right through the Astoria zone because it's so late. And they're so worried about the fish really want to smell certain water in order to be those fish, coho especially. They like to smell certain stream water to know that it's time to go. Well, maybe they're not doing it and they're just blowing through to try and get up there just in case. I don't know.
There was no bait fish, and I know that that's something that we'd always see when we're down there.
So weird.
Yeah, I mean, there's no anchovy pool. Normally you think that they're following those schools of anchovies, but
that is very, very weird. Yep.
All right, Julie has a question.
Hey, cuz, how you doing?
Great.
Hi, cousin. Yeah. How are you guys?
We're good. How have you been?
I'm doing great.
Good. Hey.
How was the deer hunting, Julie?
Oh, thanks, Dawn.
Oh, is Don rubbing that in?
Sorry. They're killers. They're killers.
Hey, we haven't.
I had his hip replaced about 2 days ago, and he's out hunting deer. Jeez.
Well, a month, but yeah.
Close.
I almost got him to go fishing, but we decided that might be a bad idea.
Yeah, the doctor told us we better wait another few weeks.
Yeah. No.
Hey, okay, I have a couple things. So I like the idea of the fish ID for the toolies. And if people are using the app, that would be so simple to add that.
Hmm.
So
Oh, I
maybe,
didn't even think about that. We haven't gone into full like throwing this out to the managers, but that would actually make the short list. I guarantee it. That's a pretty good idea.
and the other question that I always wonder is if the tulies are the issue, then how can they justifiably let the gillnets in the mainstream when they're so non-selective and
Yeah.
reporting? And so secondary to that, I keep wondering, how can they be self-reporting?
So here's a tough one. You're not going to like the answer to this, but the net entity for this year, 2022, in the fall, they had an allocation, just like sports had an allocation. The gillnet fleet didn't even come close to their allocation of the 38% segment where they get for ER, which is the exploitation rate. We not only did we come close, but we smashed it out of the water. We went over by a significant amount. In order for the sports to be able to go back in when they did, they allowed a couple of times where we were able to go back fishing again. The gillnet fleet actually had to give up like 2 or 3 percentage points in order to guarantee that not only the sport could go back in, because they shared their ER with us, but that meant that they were able to then go back in for themselves as well, which meant that they were able to keep fishing until their allocation was met as well. That was a really hard pill to swallow, because we had smashed all of our, not only our quotas, but our mortalities were already met, and then we're off the water while they're back on. And that didn't feel right. And it got to the point where it was like, God, this doesn't feel right. But it came down to the numbers added up. They hadn't touched their allocation, and that's kind of sucks. There's more of that non-concurrence crap going on, because in Washington and Oregon, they can't agree on things. We have to give up a certain percentage of this, and that actually goes in line with gillnets.
Bill, weren't they the main stem gillnets? Weren't they strictly in zones 4 and 5? And don't the tulies usually turn off before they get to zones 4 and 5?
That's actually really true. They hadn't gone in on zones 1 through 3 yet.
Yeah.
Until that late season tangle net was approved for the October period. But the zone 4 and 5 fishery, the tulies did actually show up in zone 4. And that's why they, even for sports, they ended up putting a Reed Island inhibitor, because they're going off past history. And a tule tag is the pit tag that shows up as a coded wire tag in their head. A pit tag for a tule had never been reported past the mouth of the Washougal. And that's right there in the Camas Turn. And so what they did is they moved that bump up to the Reed Island segment, which is basically zone 5 in all reality. And that was a thing.
And I
Yeah.
think they actually,
And not a lot of, and not only that, but the nets actually didn't participate much in the zone 4 area, but they were very present up in the zone 5 area.
and I think there were actually tulies that were landed above the dam this year.
Those are Spring Creek tulies. They aren't part of the
Lower Columbia. Yeah.
They don't have a part in the LRW and LRH debacle. The Spring Creek, get this, the Spring Creek hatchery had more fish than they could handle. They were only supposed to get back about 8,000 fish. They got back 110,000. They don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
They're still working on that. About about 700,000 pounds so far have been donated to the food banks up in that zone for the zone 6 fishery. That's actually a win-win for hatcheries, by the way.
Yes.
And
Amen.
whatever Spring Creek is doing, we need more of that. That needs to be placed. And Chief Joe is another prime example of what the tribal nations or whatever Chief Joseph is doing to obtain those really strong returns. I think that we need to emulate that in basically through the entire state of Oregon. We really do, and we really need to battle the wild fish groups. They are really, really, really of detriment.
Well, I can't believe it's 7:28. We could keep talking for another half hour.
Yeah,
Andrew,
we probably could, yeah.
Andrew, I
Right.
apologize. I know you've got your hand up, but we're going to have to jump. We try to be really respectful and end at the bottom of the hour, but I do need to kick it over to Dawn. One of the things that we try to do every month is we have a couple not raffle prizes. I guess they're raffle prizes, a couple giveaways. So Dawn.
Okay, so first of all, we really thank you guys for showing up. We're getting some traction. It's encouraging. One of the coolest things that happened, and it's kind of the reason Bill's here today, is we had one of the gubernatorial candidates on board until about a week ago. She was going to show up. I'm not going to tell you who it was. We, as a 501c3, we had to invite all of them, and she was on board, but her people decided she needed to be raising funds, and she wasn't going to do it on a Zoom like this, but at least says we're building credibility and people are coming to this.
That's good stuff.
So I never, with Bill, I never thought we could pay his appearance fee. So I went ahead and called him.
My appearance fee. Yeah.
Called him and thank you for coming to this thing. So Wade, explain how this works. There's an answer to one question, and the prize are these new Polar Camel cups that are in the Hatchery Wild store. We've got them in red, tomato red. We got this in
Man,
pearl and
cool.
gunmetal, and this is boot black, hot and cold. And it's a single question, and it has to be whoever raises their hand first. How do we do that?
Nope. What we're going to do is, so everybody find your chat window. There's a little quote box at the bottom of the window. And when Dawn asks a question, I'll start reading off the answers. The first one that's right, Dawn will get that award out to.
Okay, so everybody knows, most people know that Bill has a new boat, right? Or if you don't know, it's like 40 or 50 feet long. It's got three motors. But there's an ongoing joke that's going around all through the area about that boat. Does anyone have that joke? Come on.
Oh, man,
Someone's heard it.
chat line's quiet.
Oh, I don't even have that one. Dang,
Bill has
this is
it.
great.
All right, well, okay, so I'll tell you the joke. The joke is it's so big that you have to call an Uber to get to the back of the boat.
From the front to the back,
So, okay.
29 feet. That's
Yeah,
great.
and
I love
you
it.
blew it on the, one of the things that I thought was really cool about you years ago is, starting out, you're not going to be fishing 300 days a year. You're going to be fishing, building your business till it gets traction.
Yes,
And
sir.
Bill had another job. Who can answer what that was?
EMT.
Who said
Okay.
that?
Julie has EMT.
Woo!
That is
Okay.
correct.
So it
Pearl
was really
also had
cool that
EMT.
this guy was not, you start out, you're building a base of business but
Yep.
he was running
Working the
around.
mean streets,
Yeah.
the mean streets of 911 land. Boy,
Yeah.
that really ended up getting to me. Thank God I don't have to do that anymore.
Julie, you got the pearl white, you got the gunmetal. You know what gunmetal is. That's what you took out to try to shoot a deer.
Yeah, you're there,
And
Doc.
then that's black.
I think Julie wants red because yeah. I
Yeah.
like red.
Okay.
See the nod.
Okay, red. All right. Shoot me your address when you can. You know where I live. And I'll put it in the box tomorrow.
Okay,
Red. Okay.
All right.
thanks.
Again, thank you guys for doing this. This is brought to you by Communications at CCA. This is about our 14th monthly, 13th.
Oh, I bet you we're up to 18 or 20 at this point.
This is really cool. You guys know that. You know, if we could ever figure out a way to all get along on fishing groups, we could do this. You know that, right?
Hey,
We're-
you broker that deal. I'll put together the posting for NSIA and you just bring them on in.
We can do this. I honestly believe that.
I do too.
Agreed.
I do too. That's why I do this all on my own here pretty much sometimes. So yeah.
Well, you're a pretty
Yep.
ecumenical guy and it's going to take that. You know, you stood up for
Yeah.
what you believe. There are a lot of people that were having heart attacks with the closures and stuff. And you along with a couple other people that were respected came in and Paulie, you know, you guys tracked pretty well with Bruce, what
Yep.
you thought. And it was rational.
Yep.
Hey,
Yep.
cool.
It should be like that. And that's exactly what we need. That's why I'm trying to get on the R&E board. That's why I want on the Columbia River Recreational Advisor Group. This is all stuff that I really want to make calm heads prevail. I don't think that we need to be going into these fisheries as all gung-ho and everybody needs to, I'm going to beat everybody up and I'm mad about it. Speaking
Well,
when you're
we're-
mad, you know, nothing
we're-
happens there.
We're always ready to write a joint letter. We've done it for Jack Glass and other people from both
Yeah, I
CCA
want to do that.
and Hatchery Wild. Let us know. We'll write the letter.
Well, I think the key thing there was that Bill said is you got to get involved, right? I mean, that's how you're going to make change. So
That's it.
guys, I'm going to add or end it on one last thing. The best advice of the night from Wanda. Everyone, don't forget to vote. Coming up
Got it.
quick.
That's
So,
it.
Yeah.
Thanks all.
Seriously, guys.
Everyone
And-
have a
and
great
buy
night.
your Willie boat tickets.
Oh,
Willie
and
boat,
buy
Thanks,
the Willie
guys.
6 for 100.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night
Take
all.
care, you guys.
Bye.